Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yajna covers all. Yajna has covered all aspects of the personality. The personality is, the human beings can be basically divided into these personalities: perceiver, actor, feeler, thinker, contemplator. A human being performs these activities continuously: perceiver, actor, feeler, thinker, contemplator. How to convert all these 5 distinct different types of activities, integrate everything towards the goal of moksha, liberation, is these 12 yajnas. And we also saw it as a cycle. If you miss in one, you can catch up yajna in the other. That is the beauty of the cycle. Somewhere down the line, you have to start the yajna. Now, you can, if you miss at the level of yajna number 3, you can catch it at the level of yajna number 4, or you can catch it at the level of yajna number 5, or at least you can catch it at the level of the responses, or distinctly do it at the level of the pranas. But somewhere down the line, you can start this, or somewhere down the line, you should start this. Yajna is the cycle. When we say cycle, means one flows into the other. When I was discussing these 12 yajnas elaborately, I never went into the cyclical part as to how one connects to the, how one flows into the other. The connection part we have discussed. The connection part we have discussed as in the receipt, the reaction, and the response, the pranas, that connection we have discussed. What I want to say today is how you miss one, you can catch it in the, other. Depending upon the level of the spiritual growth and the evolution, you would be able to catch it at some point. A person who is very highly evolved would be able to catch it at the level of the perception itself. A person who is not that much evolved can catch it at the level of the action. Internal, somewhere we can start, and we can come to the internal process. The internal stage of recognizing it as the mind and intellect component. Having said all this, up to verse number 30, the 3 more verses, actually yajna concludes in verse number 33. And 34, he gives an extraordinary thing which we are not going to discuss now, which we will not be discussing part of the 12 yajna session. 34, verse number 34 is an extraordinary verse where he talks about the qualifications of the student, and if you have this qualification, the competent teacher will come. If you have these qualifications, a competent teacher will come. So he takes the discussion from a different tangent from verse number 34, which is not part of the 12 yajnas. Therefore, as I said in the beginning, we will conclude this with verse number 33, because this yajna portion concludes only with verse number 33. Till now, what we have done is, in Yajna, we have understand it as Ahuti and kindling. The fundamental process of Yajna is Ahuti and the kindling. So, you offer and you are blessed by your offering. You offer and the quality of the offering, blessings, is proportionate to the quality of the offering. This is the law of karma, and this yajna is based on this law of karma. You offer, and the blessings is in relation to the quality of the offering. Since the offering is of your part, Ishvara, God, is known as Karma Pala Data. Karma Pala Data means one who ensures that the result comes to you in proportion to your effort. He is not going to add anything extra to that. He is not going to add anything to it, nor will he minus. There will not be an addition, nor will there be a subtraction. God is not known as Ishtapala Data. What all you wish is going to give. It is never said. Nowhere it is said God is that. Whatever you wish for, he will give. It is not said. Or in some of the places it is said where it satisfies the person's it kind of satisfies the person's the greed, the wants. In Vedanta, in knowledge, we understand as Karma Pala Data. Karma Pala Data means one who gives the result in relation to the karmas that you have done. And we have seen karma action means is of a few. One is the actual quality of the doing. Second is the attitude with which it is done. The third one is Shraddha, with which it is done. So the pala is dependent on the quality of the doing, the attitude of the, when I say quality of the doing means the intelligent part of the action. One is the intelligent part of the action, which is known as daksha, expertise. Second is the skillful part. Second is the attitude part. And the third one is the Shraddha part. Now, all these three put together is what is known as karma, and you get the result according to the combination of these three. In yajna, what we do is the ahuti and the kindling. What is the ahuti? These three is the ahuti. What is the three? These three becomes the ahuti. What is the three? The three that goes into karma. The three that goes into karma is the expertise that you bring in, the attitude, and the shraddha. So ahuti means you can write it as these three in a very general way, and then you can put everything into it. Plus, what the depending on the ahuti, there is the kindling. The fire shoots up, as it were, to bless. Of these three, again, of these three, something is gross and something is subtle. Again, of these three also. All these three are not ABC at the same level. Some is gross and some is subtle. Shraddha is the subtlest and expertise is the grossest. That is why when you do an action with an expertise, the material benefit comes to you directly. If you have observed in normal worldly action, a person who has got a lot of intelligence and works with that expertise gets the material result of the action. But what he doesn't get is the two he doesn't get. What is the two? One is the mental peace part he doesn't get, reduction of vasanas and evolution he doesn't get. Are you able to follow? A person who does action with a lot of expertise gets the material benefit. For that will give that benefit. Expertise can give you material benefit, that comes. But what that person doesn't get is what is known as the shanti, the peace. Second thing that he doesn't get is reduction of vasanas. Therefore, we understand that where you focus upon, you get that. What you focus upon, you get that. And you cannot focus on all the three simultaneously. You cannot focus on being materialistically beneficial at the same time reduction of vasanas also. When you are focusing on the subtle, the grosser is taken care of automatically. When the focus is on the gross, subtle will be left out. So in Vedanta, knowledge recommends focus on the subtle, and whatever the gross comes, you are happy with it. And when we say whatever the gross comes, gross means the material benefits. Whatever the material benefits that comes to you will not be something of inferior quality or low in quantity. You will not get something of inferior quality, nor it will be less in quantity. It will be extraordinarily high. Only difference is you are not focused on that. You are not focused. So Yajna Karma says karma is of these three. The quality of the what you are blessed with will be entirely dependent on the combination of these three. And in these three, there is gross and there is subtle. So much of knowledge is given to recommend us to focus on the subtle. Knowledge is required only because we have to focus on the subtle. If we have to focus on the gross, knowledge is not required at all. For example, that which is pratyaksha, you don't need knowledge to come and teach you, for you already know it. Wealth is important. You don't need Shastra to come and tell you. You know it already. Family is very important. You don't need it is pratyaksha already. That which is known already by other means, you don't need Shastra to come and support it. Fallacy in thinking is this. Fallacy in thinking is that which is known by other means, we take the support of the Shastras to continue with the lower. Vedanta comes and says it is a separate entity by itself, because that through which what the other three cannot teach you, Vedanta is teaching you. Therefore, it has to be taken as an independent Brahman. And that independent Brahmanam says, focus on the subtle. Are you okay till now? These are all the process of how we say what is the logic and reason that Vedanta uses. And as I said in the very first session, I really don't intend to say we all will start doing yajna. At least we have the right. At least we have the right process in which how the Shastra analyzes for us. To understand it very simply, there are three ways, three steps. One is pure logic. One is just pure logic. Actually, it's not logic, it is pratyaksha pramana. That which is seen is there. That which is not seen isn't there. Nastika systems. That's why they are called Nastikas. Nastikas means Nasti. Not, there is nothing there. What is it? There is nothing called? There is nothing called God. It's not there. Because your existing instruments cannot cannot conceive of that. When the existing instrument cannot conceive of that, it doesn't exist. That is one. Then comes another, where it is purely logic based. Wherever Vedanta supports the logic, they take Vedanta as a support of their logic and reason. And most of the times in Vedanta classes also, I have seen people doing this mistake. Wherever logic supports, they take the support of the, whatever their existing logic is there, they take the support of the Vedanta. So Vedanta is used as an aid to support their logic. In Bhagavad Gita, in Vedanta, in the Upanishads, in the Brahma Sutras, the system that is followed is, it is taken as an independent authority, and logic and reason is used to establish that. To put it very simply, through logic and reasoning itself, you can come to the conclusion that all that is temporary, all that is changing, there is nothing permanent. You can come to this conclusion just through sheer logic, which is what in a very carefully follow, in a very general way, you can call it as Buddhist. It is so logical that straight away you can come to the conclusion that it is changing, it is temporary, it is impermanent. That which supports the impermanent is permanent is Vedanta, which is beyond the instruments. This is where we need to know how logic works in our how logic works. In the normal sense itself, even a person who doesn't know Vedanta can say all this is, even the person who doesn't have this knowledge can say this is temporary, world is temporary, impermanent, everything is changing. Now all these can be said even without any reference to God, Brahman, consciousness. For what is the proof that there is something called God? What is the proof that there is something called God, consciousness, Brahman, any word you can use? What is the proof? It is said in the Vedanta, it is said in the Shastra, it is said by the Guru, is the only proof. That's why it becomes an independent authority, and logic and reason is used to support that. So we take, when we make that statement, God is there, we use logic to support that statement. And when we use logic, we say that logic that we are using has its own limitations. Why I am saying so much is, when subtle is involved, logic cannot carry you too much into the subtlety. Logic cannot carry you too much into the subtlety. For example, even an emotion can be broken down as a chemical reaction of the brain. But then we know that it is not just the chemical reaction. They say the brain is not firing properly. If the brain fires properly, everything will be all right. I'm not saying it is wrong. The logic keeps you on a grosser plane at one level. Vedanta takes the logic to a plane where the subtleties also get involved. When the subtlety is involved, the logic and reason also must have a different aspect to it. What is the different aspect? What Shankaracharya called as Shruti Anugrahita Tarka, he says. The logic that supports the Shruti. It means sometimes where logic doesn't support, you don't let go of the Shruti for the logic. That's where the challenge is. Beautiful description he gives. He calls it as Shruti Anugrahita Tarka, where the logic supports the Shruti. It means sometimes where logic cannot support it, what the second category do? They let go of the Shruti. They let go of the Vedanta for logic. Vedanta comes and says, no, don't do that. You cannot go like that because of the sheer subtlety involved here. Because of the sheer subtlety involved here, at times, that's where Shraddha comes in. You would explanation to establish the daksha part of an action is very straightforward. You should have the right attitude is also very straightforward, logical. But when Shraddha comes in, there is a slightly different, there is an extra addition which is clear. What in the, if you read the books of the 50s and 60s, they used to call it a supralogical. Meaning sometimes it transcends logic. It transcends logic. What is it? What are the three things now? Are you able to follow the pattern of logic in Vedanta? So wherever there is we use the logic only as a tool to support it. If there is a clash between logic and the Shruti, what is left behind? The logic is left behind because of the sheer subtlety involved. It is very satisfying for the ego to retain the logic and let go of the Shruti. It is very satisfying to the ego because it says, follow that only which you understand. Follow that which only you are convinced about. All that seems to be a very good advice, but at the end of the day, it is only it turns a person very egoistic in nature. How does it turn a person very egoistic in nature? It turns a person very egoistic in nature, as in whatever suits his, wherever Vedanta suits his logic, he will take it. Yajna karma is reversing that logic. Yajna karma is reversing that logic. What is it? We are not, Vedanta is not illogical, nor is it only logical. Logic comes along with it for a while. At some point of time, it is left behind. At some point of time, it is left behind. At what point of time it is left behind? In the third component of the action, it is left behind. What is the third component? Shraddha. For the first two, you don't need Vedantic master. You don't need Krishna to come and teach us that. Adu vandu management school they will teach you that. That is why what they do, they take these two and they say Gita is also management. Correct. It's not that you cannot use it. It is used. But then the third component is what? Makes it different. What is the third component? Shraddha. What is Shraddha? The unknowable. The unknowable, that is the unknowable, that is enlivening and shaping up the action. So recognition of that. What is that unknowable? Logic comes and says that is beyond the scope of your instrument. That question you don't ask. Because why can't you say what is that unknowable also? For which it says that is anirvachaniya. That you don't ask. Because we can talk about it, but you don't have the instrument. We can talk about it, but you don't have the instrument to receive it. Number two, even the quality of the existing instrument is so poor that even the minimum receipt is also very muddled. So yajna karma comes and does the purification process. It's like saying, you know, when you are taking pictures, the mobile says, no, clean the lens of your camera. It gives a pop-up notification, no? Clean it up so that the picture is there. You will not be able to see it clearly. So what yajna karma, what is the intention of yajna karma? The intention of yajna karma is that purification. Purification for what? Purification can be for two reasons. Purification can be for a happy, better life. I want a better life. I want a happy life. I don't want this life with strife and struggle. Okay, sir, here and there, little bit of struggle is needed and all, I understand. All that I'm willing to do, I'm willing to go through all that. But overall, I want a life of Swarga. Overall, I want that life of Swarga. Avladhan. Idu vandu moksha ikshan la avanga paatla sollinu irukattum, but I will focus only on that is one. Another is inner purification for. Another thing is this inner purification for moksha. And when we talk about that inner purification for moksha, what is needed? The subtleties has to be, I need to make my instruments very sharp. The quality of the instruments that I have must be made purer and purer. When it is made purer and purer, I would be able to appreciate and convince the subtlety more and follow. Are you able to follow? If you have a very good concentration capacity and listen to a classical music, you catch the subtleties. If you don't have that kind of a concentration, when he's bringing a subtlety, you will miss it. You miss it. You will. So, in order to register the subtlety, a purification is the quality of the instrument is needed. So, what yajna karma does? It purifies the existing instruments. It doesn't add anything new. It is a purification process. Purifying what? Purifying perceiver, actor, feeler, thinker, contemplator. Purifies all these. When this is purified, what happens is we would be able to appreciate the subtlety more and more. That is where when Krishna supports, explains, and when the subtlety comes, he goes supralogical and says, Yah pashyati sa pashyati. Whoever sees it, sees it. That vision cannot be lent. That vision cannot be lent. He takes that stance. Yah pashyati sa pashyati. Whoever sees it, sees it. That comes in immediately. He brings in that. That factor. To summarize all that I have been saying till now, Vedanta is logical, and when subtleties are involved, it says it is not that you cannot understand it, it's not that you cannot appreciate it. The instrument that you have has to be purer. You have to make the instruments pure. And how to make the instruments pure? By these 12 yajnas. And when these instruments are made pure by the practice of 12 yajnas, what happens? That's what we will see in the 3 verses, and we conclude. And these 3 verses, I am not going to take verse by verse. The 3 verses, I am not going to go verse by verse, because in the regular Gita classes, I will be doing it in verse by verse. Yeah. Here it is only that we will summarize the 3 verses together. And in the summary, the last 3 verses of summary, the most beautiful part comes in verse number 33, where he establishes the law and concludes. Where he establishes the law and concludes. As in verse number 33, he says, of all these 12 yajnas, Arjuna, I think, in my opinion, Swadhyaya Jnana Yajna is best. In my opinion, that is where he takes it to a different level. That's where I see all along I am saying no. Why? Because how to justify Swadhyaya Jnana Yajna as the highest? All other yajnas we can see a benefit. In Swadhyaya, where is the benefit? Because of the subtlety involved there. Because of the subtlety involved there, and our current logic is not able to support that subtlety. So whenever our current logic is not able to support that subtlety, what has to be given up? Give up the logic. That is Shraddha in the Shastra. That is Shraddha in the Guru Vakya. That is what is known as Shraddha in the Shastra, Shraddha in the Guru Vakya. If you say no, I will not give up the, I will not give up the logic, I will give up the Shastra itself. You will be selectively taking the Shastra. You will be very selective in taking that portion, and you take some portion and you leave some portion. Now, in any subject, you should not read like that. அது வந்து எக்ஸாம்க்கு படிக்கிற மாதிரி அது. When we study in the school, colleges and all, when we study, we know, we segregate, no? And we say, okay. Yeah. And especially in, yeah, we used to do that. I remember we doing a lot in mathematics. 3 chapter choice le vittu kuda you can still score. You can still score 80, 70, 80 you can score, and leaving the 3 important topics you can leave it in choice. Differential equations choice la vitrala, calculus choice la vitrala, and still you can score 70, 80. And that fellow scores 70, 80 and sit in engineering classroom, that fellow will not understand head or tail. Graph probabilities படிச்சிட்டு 70, 80 வாங்கிட்டு அதுல இருந்து உட்கார்ந்தா what that fellow would be able to. So in any subject, you can't take some and leave something else. In any subject, you can't take some portion and leave some other portion. ஏன்னா எதெல்லாம் சாய்ஸ்ல விடுறோமோ அதெல்லாம் எப்போதுமே சட்டிலா இருக்கும். What all we leave it in choice, it will be something which is subtle in nature. In Vedanta, what we do is, the Shraddha we have in this subject is, wherever logic supports it, I take the support of logic. Wherever logic doesn't support, I take the Shraddha. How the Shraddha comes in verse number 34. Beautiful. Pranipatena pariprashnena, pranipatena sevaya pariprashnena. Wherever it is not appealing, wherever it is not appealing, he says, you question. But on the questioning, Arjuna, must be supported by these two. Pranipatena and seva irundadhan, that questioning, you will be able to grasp the subtlety. It's not just like how you ask in a mathematics classroom, Pranipatena and sevaya is not required. Yeah. In fact, angallam pranipatena sevaya sonna, it is against the Raj. I am teaching entrepreneurship and ask the people to do pranipatena sevaya na Norway jail la vechiruvanga. For that is not needed there. Here, this is an essential for Shraddha. This becomes an essential condition. So, purification. Why I am saying that all this is, what is the, how these 12 yajnas is intended in purifying these 5 aspects: the perceiver, actor, feeler, thinker, contemplator. The Vedanta treatise in the human composition chapter, PAFTC nu irukum. perceiver, actor, feeler, thinker, contemplator. Clear? Of all this, actor is the grossest, because the focus is on the other. When you are acting, the focus is on the other. So to that extent, it is easy to always start with, it is easy always to start with action. It is always easy to start with action and then move on to whatever you are, to whatever extent you can move on, you move on. But when you are doing this, Krishna's suggestion is, don't choose only one and ignore the rest. You can choose to focus on one predominantly, but other four also has to be done. As in exercise, you can focus on one thing, but you need to focus on everything also. If you are a tennis player, right hand serve, you will do that extra exercise to work on the right forearm. But you need to have an overall thing also. You choose, as you choose to focus on one, you focus on everything also. What is everything? The five: perceiver, actor, feeler, thinker, and contemplator. Wherever it doesn't help your, wherever the existing logic of us is not supporting the Shastra, with humility, what stance we take? We will not say Shastra is illogical. We will not say Shastra, Vedanta is illogical. We will not say that. We will not say Guru is illogical. We will say they are right and I am not able to understand. They are right and I am not able to understand. And you make any number of effort to, any amount of effort to, you can make any amount of effort to understand that. Any amount of effort can be made to, any amount of effort can be made to understand this. These are the essential factors we need to keep in mind when we are analyzing, when we are studying. As I said, through these 12 yajnas, I am trying to explain only how where it is logical and where Shraddha, where logic comes in and where Shraddha comes in. And where Shraddha comes in is when it is beyond our logic, Shraddha comes in. Where it doesn't help our existing logic, Shraddha comes and supports. Very difficult is to have this Shraddha. Of the three, what is difficult? Shraddha is the difficult. Why Shraddha is the difficult is because it is lot of devotion is required to say that they are right, but I am not able to understand it. Logic says, if I am not able to understand it, it is wrong. Fallacy in thinking. If I am not able to understand, it is wrong. If you can't make me understand, you are wrong. Yeah. These are all fallacies in thinking when it comes to the Shastra. They say, make me understand, make me understand, make me to understand, make me explain in such a way that I can understand. At some point of time, logic is to say that you cannot understand. Most of the time, people ask the question where they are not ready to receive where they are not able to receive the answer. Because the question comes on the plane of the logic. The answer comes on the subtler level, which they are not able to, which they are not ready to digest. Like, the child can ask this question, what is the importance? Why do I have to go to school? Can ask that question. But is it ready to understand the answer even if you give the answer? But then that questioning is very important to ensure that the child goes to school with some conviction. But that questioning is very important. At the same time, it also has to understand what I have a limited capacity in receiving the, I have a limited capacity in receiving the answer. This is where Shraddha comes in. This is where Shraddha comes in. So I say the answer is complete. Some portion I'm not able to understand. I keep coming back to that again and again and again. And when they say the only way that you can understand is refine your instrument, then only you can understand. What do I do? In the class, I will start refining the instruments. Whatever is told as a purification process, I will start doing that purification process. In this sense, we say it is logical and scientific. When we say Vedanta is logical, Vedanta is scientific, we mean it in this way. And Yajna Karma, he takes this logic almost to perfection. When I say almost to perfection is because there is no such thing called perfect logic. It can be a useful tool, but can't be perfect. It can be a useful tool in order to keep your thinking process alive. Only that much it can help. Therefore, in order to understand the subtlety, what is the subtlety? What is the subtlest part of the knowledge? At first stage, there is no God. At second stage, there is God, and God is powerful, you are less powerful compared to God. That is stage number 2. Stage number 3 is you and God are the same. 3 stages. First stage, there is no such thing called God. There's no need for God in the first place. Nature is enough. Nature is doing everything. Nature is enough. Why are you people unnecessarily bringing in a thing called God? Second is, there is God, and that God is all powerful. In relation to that all powerful God, I am small. Then comes the third stage. What is the third stage? Both are one. Both are one. So both are one is what is known is the Vakya Tattvamasi. Recognizing that in experience is Aham Brahmasmi. Recognizing that in experience is Aham Brahmasmi. So the Sishya says Aham Brahmasmi and becomes Brahman. The Guru says Tattvamasi. Now, in Vedanta, in the Gita, the Brahma Sutras, Upanishads, and all that, we are trying to get to that point. When we are trying to get to that point, some of it may look some of it may not appeal to some of it may not be appealing to our logic now, or we will not be able to understand why are we asked to do this. Why are we asked to do this? We are asked to do this because of a purification is required to understand the subtlety. And what does this purification means? In and through this PAFTC, remembrance of the divine happens. In and through these 5, the remembrance of the divine happens. This is the complete yajna karma. Subramaniam is saying logic and reasoning are at the realm of the intellect, whereas Brahman is at the realm of beyond intellect, and hence logic breaks down. Hence, sharpening
instruments.
A sharpening the instrument beyond a point will not enable to understand God logically. Correct. That is why we say Anubhava is important. This purification is essential for experiencing. Understanding is Ramakrishna Paramahamsa gives a beautiful example. A person goes to the mango orchard. He knows everything about the mangoes, how to grow it, everything, but not tasted it even once. Another fellow has tasted that mango. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa gives this beautiful example. A person knows everything about the types of mango, how to grow, everything he knows. But one thing he has not done. What? He has not tasted it. A person knows everything and tasted the mango. Some has tasted it, but they do not know the process behind it. Most of them belong to this category. We taste it, but we do not know the process behind it. Some knows the process and tasted it also. Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. This kind of guru is important, they say, the Shastras. Some would have experienced it, but they will not know how to communicate it, because they have not gone through the process also. Like when I say they have not gone through the process, means they went through the process which is unique to them, but will not be of help to the rest. Here we say we study it in a way that the purification process happens for what? The purification process is to experience. When experiencing is the goal, logic follows it to some extent. When understanding is only the goal, experiencing goes background and everything has to be brought under the logic and reason. Are you able to follow the difference? Here what we are talking about is you purify it to an extent. Purify it to an extent where you can see this very clearly. What is seeing this very clearly means? Seeing this very clearly means the impermanent is supported by a permanent. Anityam is supported by something that is nityam. That's what seeing it clearly means. If you say only anityam, it is only half part of it. If I say I see everything clearly, all these are temporary, all these are changing, fleeting, passing, temporary, is only one side of the story. The other side of the story is the Nama Rupa of the pot is supported by the nameless, formless entity called clay. So when we say you have understood it rightly, means you know the pot, so you know the clay and you know the pot also. The senses see the pot, the buddhi says there is something. The buddhi says there is something beyond it. So in that sense, purification is very important. Otherwise, the person gets carried away by what they see. So what they do, the entire process is what we call as the Chandra Shaka Nyaya, the moon branch analogy, as in education moves from known to the unknown. Up to the 2 leaves it is taken. But the moon, up to the 2 leaves it shows. Look between the 2 leaves and you will spot the moon by yourself. So I need to follow all that is said to come up to that point. So at that point of time, Vedanta says, now I also can't help you, you look. But if I have to come to that point, purification is necessary. What does purification means? Knowledge means seeing it as, the definition of knowledge is this, seeing it as it is. As it is. That's what knowledge is. What is as it is means? The clay is supported by the pot. Such a simple example they have given to explain a complex concept. The pot and the clay. 3 examples you can take. All are similar only. Gold and ornaments, cotton and garments. They use the example, the pot and the clay. When you see the clay, you understand the pot. Sorry, when you see the pot, you understand. When you see the pot, you understand the clay. But you don't have to break the pot to understand the clay. This is inner purification. To understand the clay, you don't need to destroy. You don't need to destroy the pot. You just need to go beyond it. That's all. That going beyond requires a penetration capacity, which means inner purification is required for that. That's how it works. Therefore, sharpening beyond a point will not help a person to understand God logically. All worldly subjects are a matter of logic. God is not a subject matter of logic. Consciousness is not a subject matter of, because when we use God, we mean God, Brahman, consciousness synonymously. Consciousness is not a product of logic. Consciousness is not a product of logic. Rest of the things are a product of logic. Rest of the things in the world are a product of logic. But God, consciousness is not a product of logic. But to recognize that, these instruments has to be sharpened. What is necessary to sharpen it? The perception becomes clear. What we call as poetically the Jnana Chakshu. Poetically, it is known as the third eye, which is not the literal eye. Very symbolic is that word Jnana Chakshu. The purification will ensure that Jnana Chakshu is sharper and sharper. That sharper Jnana Chakshu will tell you that where logic will drop and Shraddha takes over. That point will be very clear to Jnana Chakshu. Now that point is very muddled. Now that point is very confusing. We really do not know where to stop the logic and start the Shraddha. See, if at all there is some Shraddha, which we cannot call it as Shraddha because it is more of a personal hang-up. See, supposing if I am personally influenced by Swamiji, I would go by that, which is not Shraddha in the true sense. For that is driven by a personal hang-up. Here, we are not talking about a personal emotional hang-up. It is come through the purification. What is the purification? To see it. To see it clearly. What is seeing it clearly means? I see the clay and understand the pot. I see the world and I understand the end-livener supporting it. One. Second purification, the second reason for purification is, why purification is needed is, a purified instrument knows where logic stops and Shraddha starts, and that Shraddha is supported by that logic. Because through logic you have decided not to be logical. Yeah, it's a very yeah, what do you call that? Through logic you decided not to be logical, and Shraddha takes over. Which is what the purpose of purification is all about. Is it okay, Subramaniam? So only two things: purification and the one is I see the clay, I see the pots of various shapes and sizes, and I understand the unifying factor behind it. Second is where logic stops and Shraddha takes over. Because in Shraddha there is an element of, why we call it as Shraddha is because in Shraddha there is an element of
illogicality,
which is the faith. There is an aspect of illogicality there. It is what is known as the faith. Chariya?
So what is the end point?
What is the?
So the call it in titration the end point, no?
Yes.
When the reaction gets completed, you get an end point.
Yes.
Here, logically, I try to evolve myself.
Yes.
But without Shraddha, I stop at some point.
Yes.
I still want to search God as an object rather than a subject.
Correct.
So what will make me move from the objective way of searching a God to subjective way of realizing? What should be that trigger there?
The trigger, that's a very good clarification. All along I seek God objectively. What will be the turning point where I start seeking God? Subjectively. What brings the turning point? That turning point where you start seeking God subjectively is when so much of mananam happens and you are intellectually convinced that aham, I am God. That's why in each and every class we are trying to break our heads, sometimes maybe getting too analytical also. Why? Because at that point only it breaks. All along it has been, I see God as an object. It suits me because what is it that I think of myself?
A humble individual.
A normal individual with limitations. Correct. I am a normal individual. When I say I am a normal individual, I have limitations. Now, I say instruments have limitation. The body, mind and intellect have limitations, and that limitations of the body, mind and intellect is not going to limit me. I don't shift. So from saying I am a limited individual, I shift on to say that instruments are limited. That's where the shift happens. Otherwise, how much ever I talk and all that, I still believe that I am a limited individual. What is a limited individual? Limited individual means a few factors. Wow. What is a limited individual means? Frustration, anger, depression. Frustration, anger, depression. That limit, this is because of what? I consider myself as I use a Sanskrit word and then I explain.
Apurnatvam.
I consider myself as an atrupta, seeking contentment, seeking security. So the shift is, instead of seeking contentment and seeking security, recognizing that I am contented already, I am secure already. Ingada Shraddha comes in. At this point only Shraddha enters. Because it is beyond logic to say that I am contented already. It is very logical to convince me that how I can be permanently discontented. And death seems to be the only way out. Yeah. When a person commits suicide, what is the thinking that goes into that person at that point of time? The only way to end this is through that. A person suffering with terminal disease, the only way to end is through death. Now, we are not talking about death here. We are talking about
Apurnatvam.
from recognizing that I am a limited individual is ignorance. Thinking that I am limited is ignorant. Thinking that I am apurnatvam, that's a word. Thinking that I am apurna is ignorance. And whoever is going to grant me that purnatvam is God, and I seek God. Objectively. Vedanta, where we go one step different is, where we take the discussion one step deeper is, the very fact that you are thinking that you are a limited, constricted, restricted individual itself is ignorance. That is what ignorance is. Ignorance of your nature. Ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of your true nature. What is your true nature? Your true nature is Sat, Chit, Ananda, Purnatvam. Any word you can use. So many terminologies they use. But what am I convinced about myself now? First thing I am convinced about myself is I am an impure person. Second thing that I am convinced is I am limited. The third thing I am convinced is
I am not happy.
I am not happy. All this I am convinced. This drives the external seeking. Now, what is internal seeking means? Through the study and logic and all that, that is where when we go into the deeper study, the deeper analysis and the deeper study, which we don't get to do at all sometimes. In fact, most of the times we don't get the chance to. Most of the times we don't get to do that chance. We don't get to do that at all, because இதுவே தலை சுத்துற மாதிரி இருந்ததுன்னா அதெல்லாம் இன்னும் we say, why are we hair splitting things and all is not needed, sir. Why can't we make it simple? It can't be, it should not be made simple. For it has to be taken to that detailed splitting analysis. Therefore, the shift from the objective seeking to subjective seeking comes from what I associate this I with. At one level, they say, purify yourself. And when they say purify yourself, they don't say you are impure and purify yourself. At that point itself, they say, pure you are already. In order to see that, there is a lot of lot of muck covered. Like Ramtirtha's example is the moss covering the lake. There is the moss that is covering the lake. As you remove the moss, the algae, what do you call that? Algae. Well, as you keep removing that, your perception becomes clearer and clearer. What is that clarity? That turning point is that clarity. What is the clarity? I am a sufferer. I am in bondage. Idallam da ajnanam. What is ignorance? I am a sufferer is ignorance. I am in bondage is ignorance. I am this limited, constricted, restricted individual is ignorance. Obviously, when we say you are all pervading, for example, when they say you are all God is all pervading and you are God, it is so obvious that you are not even room pervading. Yeah, you are not even room pervading. You are not even chair pervading. Yeah, chair persa. So from when you see like this and when you hear all pervading, both doesn't go together at all. When they say all power, you don't even have a power over COVID-19, and when they say you are all powerful, it doesn't. What they say and what we experience seems to be no. That is why we say in the portion of Vedanta, whatever portion of Vedanta is helpful, we will take. Only the good portion we will take, they say. No, there's no such thing as good portion or bad portion. You have to take it. You have to take it completely. What is the completeness? Take the simple example. How absurd it is to say you are all pervading. So when they say you are all pervading, the pervasiveness of the body is explained. The pervasiveness of the mind is explained. The pervasiveness of the intellect is explained. And in that explanation, the limitation is also. In that explanation, the limitation is also explained. Through the explanation of these limitations, you understand that when they say you are all pervading, they are referring to some other you in me. Are you able to follow? They are referring to some other you in me. I don't thinking. Because obviously, yeah, at least when I heard this first, I went and thought, you are all pervading, na yenga all pervasiveness. Yeah. To frame out, I'm not even room pervading. Where is the room pervading? No obesity. Yeah, there is a pervasiveness there. So they say the pervasiveness of the body, the pervasiveness of the mind, the pervasiveness of the intellect, and when they explain the limitations of all that, it means I understand they are not referring to. It means they are not referring to the body, mind, and intellect as all pervading. So I disassociate. So I make an effort to disassociate from body, mind, and intellect to understand what is all pervading. Angada, the shift. I'm still answering that. Very, very important. In the yajna portion, should help us to get into this thinking process from seeking God objectively to seeking God subjectively. And they say you are all powerful. Yeah. A small, I'm not able to fight a small virus. Where am I? Where am I being all powerful? So it means the body is not all powerful. Mind is so affected by the remark of another and it is agitated, disturbed. It is not all powerful. Intellect. If somebody comes with a different logic and reason and can prove all that I have said as wrong, you take all that I have said to somebody else, they can take each and every word of what I said and analyze it and say, this man is blabbering. He doesn't know what he is. He doesn't know what he is saying. So all these can be proven as, it means my power is so limited. Then I understand when they say all powerful, they don't refer to the body, the mind, and the intellect. And they say when you are changeless, this is what Mananam is all about. In fact, in Mananam, this is what we are supposed to do. When they say you are changeless, Nitya Vastu. Nitya Vastundrade wrong statement. Nityam, they say. First they say object nali Nityatvam cannot come to an object. Because object itself means has a beginning and an end. That which has a beginning and an end. So one connects with the other, and you move. Are you able to follow? The incidental benefit of all this thinking is what? This is how we say, he say Vedanta strengthens your intellect. The incidental benefit of this thinking is this thinking has become so sharp and so penetrative, wherever you focus upon, you can understand it like this. Because you have completely disassociated from, you are completely disassociating yourself from the instruments. So the twin benefits is, actually we are not interested in the second benefit at all a lot. That is more incidental benefit. The primary benefit is I won't say primary benefit, the primary ideal, the primary motive, lakshya with which we are doing this is to recognize that. What is it? The shift from seeking God objectively to seeking God subjectively. When they say you are all powerful, you will turn back and say, how am I all powerful, sir? They say, you na body nanchinda, you are not all powerful. Mind you na nanchinda, you are not all powerful. Intellect is you na nanchinda, you are not all powerful. But I know only body, mind and intellect. Now that you know there is body, mind and intellect, and these are changing and moving and all that, like the various parts, there has to be a clay supporting it. By breaking the pot, you will not get to the clay. For you don't need to break the pot to understand the clay, to get the clay. As the pot is, are you able to follow the logic now? As the pot is, that's what clay is. It's not that only if you break the pot and remove something from the pot, you get the clay. As the clay is what the, sorry, as the pot is what the clay is. Look at the angle they have taken it. But all this can be so intellectually stimulating, and we can get lost in that also, because it's so. I'm so tempted to go into so much of details, but I'm restricting myself because it is so intellectually. I tell you, so intellectually stimulating, but we can get lost in the intellectual
logic.
We can get lost in the intellectual stimulation itself. Again, we have lost the
core purpose.
Again, we have lost the core purpose. We have to understand it like this. This is the shift from seeking God objectively to seeking God subjectively. That's where whenever they say, how can you say all powerful? How can you say all powerful? When you say you, now what have you identified the you with? If I have identified the body with me, obviously the body is not all powerful. And which is so obvious, are they going to make such a silly statement to say that your body is all powerful? And they say all pervading. Are they so silly to make a statement to say that the body is all pervading? Because they are the one who says there are these three states. They are the one who says it goes into unmanifest form and all that. It means they know the limitations of all this. So what do you identify with? If you have identified it with the subject, meaning the body, mind, intellect, all these definitions of God becomes redundant. All the indicative definitions of God become so redundant if you see it from the identification with the body, mind, intellect. And the PAFTC in Soname first. And the PAFTC identification, not a patha, all this looks absurd. So Yajna Karma is to disassociate from the perceiver, actor, feeler, thinker, contemplator component, learned to seeing the broader picture. That is shifting from external to internal. Are able to follow the shift. This is the manana.
So the matter vestures, let's say
Yes.
body, mind, intellect.
Yeah.
You're able to understand that these are all matter vestures.
Yes.
What enlivens the matter vestures
Yes.
is what I am.
Yes.
There is a positioning shift that takes place in me.
Yes.
There is
a shift of correct. Correct.
So that positioning shift simply cannot take place purely based on intellect. Is the
correct. It cannot purely it cannot be purely logical only. So those definitions, we use logic to support those definitions. That's all. Like as I said, that's why I gave these few examples of analysis. When they say all pervading, they are not so silly to say that Aravindan is all pervading. When Aravindan doesn't pervade even the table, the chair that I am sitting in, I don't pervade. So there is always something bigger than me. There is always something greater than me. There is always something more powerful than me. Vedanta comes and says, that is because you are comparing one instrument with another instrument. One pot is bigger than another pot. There is a smaller wave and a bigger wave. And the bigger wave will swallow the smaller wave. That is only in relation to the waves. So you shift the, what do you identify the I with? That is the classic advice of Ramana Maharshi. Whoever goes, all your problems is because he talks pure Vedanta and only one sentence he spoke. He will not go into this analytical things and all. For he knows it only one thing, what? All the problems is because of what have you associated the I with? What have you associated the I with? If you have associated the I with the material vestures, we can call it as PAFTC, we can call it as koshas, we can call it as body, mind, intellect. There are very many ways of describing it. That's all. See, all these are a very general explanation. For they are not so interested in going into the details of it. Why they are not so interested in going into the details of it? When the focus has shifted to the subtlest, they can't spend time on knowing the grosser in detail. But they gave a broad picture of it, and they say go into the depth. What is it? What do you identify the I? The I with. In the I inuடைய, the according to the beauty of the Sanskrit grammar is that, and the ahamuடைய one of the things the mama. The Sanskrit grammar and the seven idula, the I turns into
me
and mine. The I, the me and mine also, they don't talk about it a lot. Why they don't talk about the me and mine also a lot is because all that comes from the I only. So the entire focus is restricted to what is this? What is this I? With what I identify the I with? This is the shift. All boils down to one thing. The Guru asks, who are you? According to the answer you give, he knows your level. Govinda Bhagavad Pada asked Shankaracharya, who are you? He went into 8 slokas. Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. I am not this, I am this. I am not this, I am this. He looks like an enlightened person already. Then why go to a Guru then? The difference is, I am convinced that I have to shift to the I. But to actually sit and do that, the Shraddha, the Guru becomes a vital point here. So when the Guru asks, who are you? Yeah. I'm saying how it works. When they say, who are you? I am a business person. You have associated the I with that factor of that. I am a good person. Abdina, I have associated the I with this. So negate all that is known and go to him to recognize that which is unknown. Just remember this portion of the meeting point of Govinda Bhagavad Pada and Shankaracharya. Govinda Bhagavad Pada asked Shankaracharya, who are you? Who are you? I am son of, I am Shankara, the son of so and so, coming from Kaladin. He didn't say that. He said, Name Mrityu Janka Name Jati Vedaha. He went into 8 slokas saying, and if you read that 8 slokas, you used to wonder what more Govinda Bhagavad Pada is going to teach him now. What more is there for this fellow to? What more is there for him to be taught? For all he says. The difference is, through logic he has negated that. Through logic he has negated that. But the assertion part is where the shift comes in. That's where the what is known as the inevitable, you should not say that, the inevitable necessary evil call to Guru comes in. For he is the one who can convince he is the one who has the capacity to assert. Through logic I can negate. He asserts. That's how the combination works. That's how the combination works. So the Guru will never talk about the assertion a lot. He will talk about negate. Because once you have peaked up in negation, you will automatically come for assertion. And the Guru, you become a Shishya and you will come automatically. This is how the knowledge of Vedanta helps in shifting from the objectively seeing God to subjectively seeing God. And they say, you are the creator. You know that you yourself is created. How can you become the creator? No. Just as the mind created the dream. Wow, what a way to explain. What an explanation to come and say, how can you not get convinced? How can you not negate it? These are all the ways. Seriya? Okay? Okay, Subramanian?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. With this, conclude for today. I intend to do one more session and finish off all the three. One more session I am intending, unless there are some clarifications. It's not that we don't have this hard and fast rule. We don't have the hard and timetable. So I'm intending to finish. Rajaram is saying, I'm unable to conceive of changeless seeing. I'm unable to conceive of changeless seeing, changing body, mind, and intellect. Please explain.
Rajani is saying that.
Rajani is saying that. Oh, okay. Oh, na Raja. Oh, okay. Mati padikirano. Okay. Rajaram. Oh, our voice is breaking now. Okay. Rajani is saying, I am unable to conceive of changeless seeing, changing body, mind, and intellect. Anything that is changing has a relative changelessness supporting it. Anything that is changing is supported by something that is relatively unchanging in relation to that change. Understand it like this. I'll explain it in the, it requires some explanation. Remind me in the next session when I start it first. But I'm just giving the formula now. The formula is, in relay, the body is changing in relation to the notice. You notice the change in relation to that which is something changeless in relation to that. You notice the change only in relation to that which is changeless. Otherwise, you can never, otherwise you will never be able to recognize any change. And that changeless, that with which you are noticing the change, has to be relatively changeless in relation to this change. The moving clouds are seen in relation to the clouds are seen as moving in relation to you not moving. Supposing if you are also moving at the same speed as the cloud is, what will happen? To conceive of changeless, you need to conceive of changeless, you can see the changing body, mind, and intellect. Second thing is, you can't conceive the changeless, he said very clearly. I am unable to conceive of change. How can you conceive? You cannot conceive is what is told already. I am unable to conceive the changeless is what is told already. If you have to conceive, you need to purify is what is being told already. So, I am unable to conceive of changeless means what? How can you conceive? How can the product precede the producer? How can you conceive? How can the intellect conceive that? With what you are trying to conceive? With intellect. How can the intellect do that? I am unable to conceive. Obviously, you cannot conceive. Yeah. If I have to, I am unable to conceive, na, what is he actually saying now? What is the fallacy in that statement? I am unable to conceive. Na? What has he associated the I with? Intellect is unable to conceive. Obviously, the intellect cannot. So, what has he equated the I with? Where is she stuck? Where is she stuck? She's stuck at the level of, she's stuck at the level of the buddhi, the intellect. She's stuck at the level of the intellect to say, I am unable to conceive. She should say, intellect is unable to conceive of changeless. Answer is straight away. What is the answer?
Intellect cannot.
Intellect cannot. So what is the question? There is no question. The challenge, the difficulty is when she says, I am unable to conceive. She just slipped in that word I. Yeah, she just slipped in the word I. I didn't want to answer this first. First, I wanted to explain the formula. What is the formula? The changeless can be seen only in relation to, the changeless can be seen, recognized only in, can be conceived only in relation to that which is all the changes, means there is something that is changeless at the core. It's an inference. There is no, it's a kind of inference. There is no perception here. What she is saying is, I am unable to see changeless when I am seeing changing body, mind, and intellect. Of course, you can only see the seeing, changing body, mind, and intellect only you can see. And when you say, I am unable to conceive, what is the I equated with? The I has been ignorantly, clear, innocently, foolishly, clear, ignorantly, innocently, foolishly, borrow Swamijina, stupidly. I is associated with intellect, and intellect obviously cannot conceive. We have already explained it. Intellect cannot obviously conceive. Seriya? Therefore, I am unable to conceive of changeless, seeing, changing body, mind, and intellect. Please explain. What are you equating the I to in this? Number one. Number two is that which is what is saying the body, mind, and intellect is changing. When you say seeing, changing body, mind, and intellect, what is it that is saying that it is changing? Is there a lack of penetration in the question itself? What is it that is saying that I am seeing body, mind, and intellect is changing constantly? It is a kind of intellectual inference. It is a kind of intellectual inference, but not thought of enough. What is that thing? The I,
Yeah.
the I should be equated with, the I should be equated with Brahman, the self. I am unable to conceive of changeless, intellect unable to conceive of changeless. So I can replace the word I with intellect, or I can replace the I with Rajini herself, but still the answer remains the same. Are you okay, Rajini? Think in that way. So yeah. With this, we conclude for today.